many years ago, when Governor Brown first became governor, he was trying to deal with the effects of the recession in 2008, 2009, and needed to cut our budget. And so one of the things that he cut, he was very good at cutting, he still is kind of good at it, is he cut the redevelopment agency, which was where dollars for affordable housing used to sit. And for almost 10 years, we haven't had any source of money. So Prop 1, first of all, started as a bill by Senator Jim Bell, who is a senator from San Jose. And it passed the Senate and the legislature, and the governor signed it, but there were some conditions. One, because the money would come from a bond, that means that we, the taxpayers, have to pay that bond back, and we pay it back with some interest. It's very low interest. It's probably the cheapest way to borrow money. But if it's going to be on our back, so to speak, then the legislature can't just pass it without voter approval. That was number one. Number two was that this would create a pot of money. But if you are in construction or you have ever tried to rehab something in your house, you know how much it costs these days to build. And so even though $4 billion sounds like, I mean, to me it sounds like it might as well be zillions. I mean, it's a lot of money. But in the scheme of things, it's not enough to address our housing crisis. So the money is meant to be a pot that communities can apply to, but they're only going to be eligible to receive a portion of that money if they can prove that they are that they've got a plot of land identified for the housing, that they have other sources of money, whether they're local, federal, private investors, who will add on to the money that they apply to from the state. The housing has to be only provided to people who meet affordability standards. And if they don't build within a certain amount of time with the money from the state, it goes back into the pot and the proposal is kaput. Because we've had that problem. You know, communities are all required in California to build a certain percentage of affordable housing, but then some communities don't want affordable housing in their community. So they try to give their percentage to a neighboring community and say, will you build the housing for us because we don't want it in our backyard. We're not going to let that happen anymore. And so this proposition sets up some conditions upon which you can receive this money. And if you don't build within a certain amount of time, the money gets taken back. So it requires communities to be serious about building this housing to address our housing crisis. And one other thing really important about this money, there is some money in the $4 billion for communities to develop programs to assist people who already have housing, like homeowners, who need some rehabilitation to their homes in order to stay in them safely. So this is really important for seniors, because you may own your home outright, but now that you live on a fixed income and you're not going to get a raise anymore, or you can't change your job because you're retired, it becomes challenging to do things like fix your roof, or get a new boiler, or put in grab bars and other things to make your house more accessible so that you can stay there and retire there, right? And so part of the money is available for existing homeowners who are on a fixed income, meet the affordability standards, for cities to develop programs to help them rehab their homes so that they can stay in their house, rather than having to then try and find a new place to live in this very crazy market that we're in. Okay? Other questions about any of these? Yes.
I was just wondering about the kidney dialysis thing. Is the only way you can get kidney dialysis through the private programs, or what?
Yeah. 75% of dialysis in California is done through private corporations. And in California, there are only two, DaVita and Fresenius, or something like that. And so they monopolize the market. You can get dialysis in a hospital. So if you're a hospital patient and you require dialysis, you can get dialysis while you're in the hospital, whether it's for a kidney problem or some other thing. If you need dialysis, you can get it, but it's not a clinic that's available for the public to come and use. And how many of you have somebody or know somebody who's ever had dialysis? Yeah, you have to get dialysis like 3 times a week, sometimes 4 times a week, and it's for like 3 or 4 hours at a time. This is no like, you know, go get a little vaccination and go home. This is major, serious service that needs to be done safely, competently. I mean, you're cleaning out someone's blood. This is a life-saving service. And so these 2 corporations who are private are not regulated. The hospitals are regulated. They're regulated through all kinds of different mechanisms, but the private clinics right now are not. So this legislation would provide some regulation for the clinics, as well as require that a larger percentage of the money that they receive go directly to patient care, which includes better staffing as well as sanitation. And I just got this email yesterday night from a member of one of our affiliates who's a dialysis patient. This is in Oakland. And she's a dialysis patient, but she comes on the days she can to our meetings. And she was in dialysis, and as she left, the clinician or someone at the this is a DaVita location, handed her a little bag, kind of like the bag we're going to give you, with a bunch of information about why that person should vote no on Prop 8. And basically what it said, and she typed this out and emailed this to me, it said that if you vote for Prop 8, you will be terminating your ability to get dialysis, which is absolutely not true. But the companies are really, and I find it completely, I don't think it's illegal, but it seems very immoral for people who you're pretty wiped out after dialysis, and as they're walking out the door after being on a machine for 3 or 4 hours, telling them, so you should vote this way, or else you won't be able to come back here and get service, seems really immoral to me. Also, it's not true.
But it does seem illegal.
Okay.
I forgot to say something when I was standing up there. Who would vote yes? The people who know about these issues. Be ready for the blitz of television ads from these companies that are going to say how awful Prop 8 is going to be for people.
Absolutely.
They have a ton of money, and they are making enormous profits at our expense, at all of our expense, even not even if you're a dialysis person, but it raises all of our insurance premiums in order to cover the $150,000 that they charge per dialysis patient when it really only costs $30,000 for a year to provide the care. So they're making enormous profits that get passed on to all of us. And with some of that money, they're going to try and convince all of you that Proposition 8 is going to make it more difficult and more expensive for you to get the care that you need. And so please, please pay attention. Look at who's paying for the advertisements that you get, because these are all being funded by DaVita and Fresenius because they want to keep things the way they are. Other comments or questions? Yes.
Well, I have a comment about the dialysis and anybody who would consider voting no. As a nurse, I've taken care of infected dialysis grafts, and you have no idea if you're worried about healthcare costs, plus the cost of having to put in a new graft, because once those grafts get really infected, they're done. So it's something to think about, and what these patients go through is horrible.
Very scary. But this woman who Fran was mentioning before, who is a clinician at a dialysis clinic in Richmond at our meeting, was telling us that each clinician sometimes has 7 or 8 patients that they're monitoring at one time. And if you know you could have a problem while you're in dialysis, you have to be monitored really closely, because one false thing and your blood pressure can go up, you could get infections if they're not cleaned properly. I mean, this is pretty tender business, pumping your blood. And so if she got called, which often happens, to deal with one of the patients who's suffering from an emergency while they're in dialysis, it means all 7 of her other patients are unattended. So we need better staffing, we need better sanitation, we need some of the money that they're using for private jets and executive salaries to come back into the clinics so that we can be assured that we're getting the kind of care that we're all paying for. Other questions about any of these? Yes, in the back, and then I'll get you, Margot.
I just wanted to know if we know what kind of account the existing funds for homelessness and housing services is in, and then kind of the same question as with the building of the affordable housing. How do we know, what's the guarantee that it's going to go to those services?